Serafina has described the 1 million Australians around the world, our diaspora, as a smart grid of human capital. And she's absolutely right. And it was neglected for years. Lucy's dad, Tom Hughes, the great barrister, often would describe an opponent's point with disdain as being a penetrating glimpse of the obvious. But you know something? It's amazing how many penetrating glimpses of the obvious go unobserved until somebody actually picks it up. And what were we thinking not to take up the challenge of uniting, of connecting this extraordinary diaspora of 1 million Australians, 1 million adventurous, enterprising, creative, innovative, competitive Australians right around the world. Now, we are a most remarkable nation. Now, I know every Prime Minister, every President claims their nation is exceptional. You know, everyone has a claim to exceptionalism of one kind or another. But we are, without any doubt, the most successful multicultural society in the world. There is no comparable country of our scale, or larger for that matter, that has such a large percentage of its population born from outside its borders. In Australia overall, it's about 26 or more percent. In this city, it's close to a third. And it is from every corner of the world, and every race, every religion, every cultural background. And we have been able to achieve that with remarkable harmony. As we've heard from Auntie Norma, we have in Australia the oldest continuous human cultures on earth. Not far from here. Not very far from here at all. If you're on your way to the airport, you could drop into La Perouse and you would see there the most extraordinary story of resilience. An Aboriginal community whose forebears were there 40,000 years ago. And they were there a few hundred years ago when the white men arrived with their ships. What a resilient story that they're still there. The remarkable achievement of our first Australians. It's one we should always celebrate and honour, and as Norma said, walk on that path of reconciliation further. We've got a long way to go. But you know, we are as old as our first Australians' culture, and we are as young as the baby in the arms of its immigrant mother. We're as old as that and as young as that. That is our remarkable achievement. And it's that multiculturalism, that globalism, that internationalism that is so extraordinary. And what we see with Australians is an ability to embrace the world as it is. We are, if you like, a nation made for the 21st century. This is a century of globalism. I've said it, you've heard me say it before, particularly the parliamentarians, but we are living at a time in human history when the pace of change is quite unprecedented in both its scale and the speed, the nature of the change that we're living with. Think of the transformation in the last generation. Think of the transformation in technology. Think of the way in which we see distance differently. I remember when I went to university in England in 1978. Lucy and I think maybe we had one or two telephone calls. They would have been very brief. They were prohibitively expensive. Faxes didn't exist. Certainly email, the internet didn't exist. And so we corresponded on aerograms. I might say the good thing about that is we have two large folders of aerograms. My aerograms to her and hers to me. So that's the dividend, and our children have ploughed through them at different times and been shocked at some of the... you know, Daisy drew my attention to some rather romantic remarks I'd addressed to her mother, and I said, well, I was very lonely, darling. Very lonely. Anyway, we were so far away, you know, and you'd read the English papers and the only thing you'd read about Australia was a cricket score. And then not even a generation later, when our son Alex, in 2001 in fact, at the time of 9/11, when Alex went to study in the United States, he could read all of the Australian newspapers, generally before us, because they were posted not long after midnight. Email was there, telephony was so cheap it was almost free, within less than a generation, in 23 years in fact, it was a complete transformation in the way we saw distance. And Australians, however, have been naturals for this. I mean, I know many of you, including Ken, have worked with large global investment banks, as indeed I have. And you'll find that all of the big banks, all of the global banks and global firms like Dow and IBM, of course, are represented here and are great sponsors and acknowledge your generosity in sponsoring Advance. But you'll find that global firms will generally overhire Australians. And what I mean by that is they will hire more Australians than they could ever employ in Australia. And the reason for that is Australians are naturally global citizens. Because we grow up in a multicultural country, because we have always been outward looking, we naturally embrace the rest of the world. So the important thing is to harness this smart grid of human capital. And we're doing that. And the strides that Advance has made are extraordinary. The achievements of the prize winners, as you'll hear them all tonight, so I won't spoil the presentations and indeed a few surprises later in the evening, which as Wayne knows and Arthur knows, cabinet ministers are great secrets reposed in them. As Martin Parkinson knows, as the head of the public service, that's probably quite unwise. But nonetheless, we'll keep those secrets. We can keep them for a few minutes at least. But what you've been able to do is make that connection between Australians overseas to promote their own businesses, promote their own opportunities. That networking is of critical importance. One of the other great paradoxes we have is that when the internet arrived, and it was an extraordinary transformation, many people said, well, this will benefit the periphery at the expense of the centre, because you can do all your business sitting on an island in the middle of the ocean or on a mountaintop, or you don't have to be connected. And yet what has happened, and Lucy, the Chief Commissioner, Lucy knows this better than most as our great urbanist here, cities are more important than ever. Why are they more important than ever? Because we humans are very social animals. We are always more creative when we are connected, when we are engaging with each other. And that's why networking is so important. It's why Robert Putnam said years ago that for most of us, our best asset is actually our social capital, our Rolodex, he said in those days. I guess it would be the contacts in your smartphone today. And what we're doing, or what you're doing, Serafina and Glenn and Ken, what you're doing with Advance is enabling all of us to benefit from that extraordinary connection of all of those million Australians and all of their experience and contacts in the rest of the world. Now, one of the programs that you've promoted is called Elevate 61, and it showcases Advance's enormous value for our innovators and entrepreneurs by matching local businesses with international advisors, customers and investors. The value of this program was underscored just a few days ago when Simpro, an Australian cloud technology group and Elevate 61 company, secured $31 million in funding to support growth in the United States and the UK. Now that's Australian IP taking on the world, and the type of example that goes to the very heart of my government's national innovation and science agenda. I firmly believe that we cannot secure our prosperity without a passionate determination to promote innovation and science. We must be smarter, faster, more agile. We have to be more competitive, more open. I know that there are populist arguments abroad people wanting to put up walls and talking about protectionism, walls metaphorical, more walls real in different jurisdictions. But the reality is that the key to success is that engagement, that openness, and that networking of innovation that drives the growth of the 21st century. Remember, what is the key tenor of our times? It is change at a pace and scale unprecedented in human history, and that requires us to be fast, global, innovative, engaged right around the world. Advance harnesses that enormous smart grid of human capital, our diaspora. So Lucy and I are thrilled to be here with you tonight. Our son Alex and his wife and is of course a part of that Australian diaspora, as many of your children and as many of you have been yourselves. We are strengthened by that. We have to be more open, more global, more connected. 1 million Australians overseas is, at any time of course, is an extraordinary wealth of experience which Advance is bringing together. It was, Ken, a profound insight, a historic achievement to set up Advance. You set it up at a very dark time, but it will be a key element in our nation's very bright future. Thank you very much and congratulations.